And hello, I'm Steve Day, owner of British Car Ranch, and welcome to our shop today. Behind the camera today is Christopher, my son. He's taking all of the videos for us and making things look better than they need to be, I'm telling you. So, say hi, Christopher.
Hi, Christopher.
Oh, very good. He takes a good cue. So, this is video number 3 of the series that we've titled up, How to Wake Up Your British Sports Car After a Long Winter's Nap. And it could also apply, the longer the time it's been sitting, the more it needs the list. The checklist has been made up here at the British Car Ranch because we see lots and lots of these kinds of cars, probably half of our business. And we've over time discovered that failures give warnings, and if you check and prevent those, you get better results down the road. So why have a checklist? Well, prevent the breakdowns. Also, there's an amount of wear that occurs on an engine that hasn't been running in the last week or so. It's dry, it's cold, it doesn't have any lubrication ready to go. The longer the sit, the drier it gets, and that first few minutes of running up and down can give you a lot of excess wear that you just don't need to have. So to prevent that, we've created the checklist so that we can get ahead of it and give us a better chance at a startup with no wear. So the list is made up into 3 phases, and I'll call those good, better, and best. And it's set up that way so that folks that don't have enough time can do the good and do a very quick check, or go to the medium, the better, and do a more comprehensive check with better results, or go to number 3, which we're going to do today, and really get ahead of the wear and the maintenance, catch up on the maintenance that's due. So, this and all of my videos are not intended to teach you how to do something. More, it's in general to tell you what is needed, and that gives you the information and the education so you can talk to your professional mechanic and say, this is exactly what I want and what I've seen and what I need. You'll get better results being a better informed consumer. Since I can't be there looking over your shoulder and helping you and keeping you out of trouble, that's what we'll call these videos, is what needs to be done. So, we'll do a quick review. Video number 1, we did checking the oil, checking the coolant, checking the hydraulic fluids, checking the fuel in the tank to see if it's still good, checking the dash pots on the carburetors to see if they've got oil in it, and then fire off and away we go. In video number 2, we covered charging the battery because certainly it's going to be low after a long storage. We've put some oil in each combustion chamber through the spark plug holes. We've changed the oil and the filter. We've made sure that the hydraulic fluid is clean and amber. We've stomped on the brake pedal and held it for a while to see if it holds firm, and then come out and see if there's a leak at any one of the corners. We've then bled 6 strokes at each corner of the vehicle to get rid of that corroded brake fluid. And we've put air in the tires up to what our preference is. Ours is 32 pounds. So, if you would like to have any more details on those, review number 1 or review number 2, and they'll be there. Now for number 3. This is the one that I'm in favor of naturally because it gives our best results for preventing wear and also catching up on the maintenance that's going to give us problems, sneak up on us on the road sometime down. Today we're going to start number 3 with checking the fan belt. On the TR6 here, we can get right to it, and we're looking for the fan belt tension. This looks like a very good tension. The alternator is over here, and it can stand that fan belt being a little tighter. If we have a generator on our car, we want to have more looseness. I'm pushing really hard here. We want to have more looseness on the fan belt so we don't take out the front bearing. A little bit lighter on a generator, tighter on an alternator. We want to kind of bend it over and look at the side of the belt and see if there's any weather checks or cracks showing up. This one, of course, is brand new and it's looking very good. And then we want to review our notes and see if that fan belt is over 5 years old. The magic number is 5 years for a fan belt. That's when it should be replaced. It can go unexpectedly anytime after that. So the next item on the list would be to clean the battery terminals. Now we've checked the battery and see what the charge is, but let's remove the terminals and use our handy wire brush battery cleaner to clean those terminals. Put them back on, snug them up, get our boots back on them. If it's been longer than a winter, I would suggest checking and cleaning the starter solenoid connections, which follow this wire down and it'll lead you right to those connections. We also, while we're here, we want to check what the state of charge is on the battery. And we can use an inexpensive $15, $19 multimeter to check the battery. Plug that in and we go red to hot, black to negative, and read out what that voltage is. We want to have 12.6 as an ideal. If we get down to 12.3 or 2, we can get into starting problems and it'll or click, nothing going at all. So after that, we will be looking at the fuel filter, and on this particular car, it's located down here on the fuel line just ahead of the carburetors. Now, you'll notice that that one, if you can see it well enough, is a clear fuel filter. We prefer the Wix clear fuel filters here at the ranch because, number one, they're made of high-grade materials and very sturdy, but obviously the most important thing is we can see inside what's going on. And if that fuel filter is full of small particles of rust and crap, we know what's going on back at the fuel tank. And secondarily, we can tell when there's a layer on the bottom of the fuel bump or fuel filter, it's time to replace that filter. As a general rule, if you're very conservative, 2 years, and if you're not, 3 to 5 years, and that would take care of it. The next item we'll look at is if you have a fuel filter, this next step will be less important. If you don't have a fuel filter, it's critical. The carburetor fuel bowls, float bowls, storage tank, whatever you want to call them, is located on the side of these SU carburetors. And as fuel comes into them, some of the particles that are mixed in with the fuel settle to the bottom of this fuel bowl. It's important every couple of years to take the lid off and clean out all of that crap that's starting to build up in the bottom of the fuel bowl. That's the last safety step in the carburetor, is that tendency of the bowl to gather the crap at the bottom and keep it out of the needle and seat. So, we'd remove the lids on these. We would take a rag and soak it out, get rid of the fuel cleanly, wipe out the bottom of the bowls, take the crap out of there, put it back on with some new gaskets on the lids, and move on to the next item. The next item is the tire date code. There seems to be some confusion about that out there, and the Department of Transportation has discovered over the years that the rubber, that glue that holds the rubber together in a tire can let go after it ages a certain number of years and unexpectedly cause a blowout in the tire. Well, that's extremely dangerous. In their studies they've done, they found out that between 7 and 10 years is when that can happen. So they have set the limit at 10 years on how old your tire can be after manufacturer. After that, it has to be changed. A tire store cannot operate on a 10-year-old or older tire. They'll refuse to. So it's up to you to check those date codes and stay up with it. You can have absolutely wonderful tread and be 10 years old and in danger. So how do we find out? We have our nice Pirelli ancient tire here, and the date code is only on one side of the tire. Usually it's on the inside of the tire, so it's hard to see. That's what we're looking at here is Department of Transportation, and then a bunch of numbers that mean nothing. And then there's an oval with 3 digits in it. This one is 041. So that is telling us that it is the 4th week of 91 that it was made. If what we're hoping to find is an oval with 4 digits in it, and that would be after the year 2000. So if this had a 0401, that would be the 4th week of 2001. And we would be just barely within the legal limits of tire safety. So that's how you read a tire date code. Check that out and see what you've got, and you might be surprised. So, the next item on the list is the biggie, and that is the tune-up. Now, a major tune-up consists of a lot of different things, and that only has to be done, let's say every 5 or 6 years, depending on how many miles you drive and what kind of conditions you drive under and so forth. But for this purposes of this video, we will check the tune-up every year, and that would be moving over to the distributor. We will pop the cap, pull the cap off, and we'll take a look visually at what's going on inside. Now, this one has the nice red rotor. That's the first good thing to look for. If you have a black rotor, that's not as good. They're not made as well. We're going to check the gap on the points. We're going to check the condition of the rotor. We're going to check the condition of the distributor cap. You'll notice I like to use the brass terminals. And we'll push our finger on this carbon button in the middle to make sure it's flexible and not stuck. Put the cap back on. Down the road we can go on that part of it. Now, if we were doing a major tune-up, we would be replacing all of those parts that we just talked about instead of just checking them. The items that last the longest are the spark plug wires, and they can be left to the maximum time amount that you want to have go by. The things that wear out the most are those points inside. They should be checked and adjusted or replaced once a year. The spark plugs, they're inexpensive enough and they do a valuable job, so they could be replaced every year. And the rotor. So depending on how much certainty you like to have, you can move that from once a year to once every 3 years. Pretty soon you'll know what your time span is, but they should be checked once a year. That will keep you out of trouble and breakdown. The next part of the major tune-up would be taking the valve cover off and adjusting the valves to make sure that they're set at the proper limits. Then setting the timing on the distributor with a stroboscope timing light, and checking the idle and fuel mixture. After all of the rest of it is done, the fuel is the last thing you approach. The fellow that taught me many years ago said, believe it, 90% of your carburetor troubles are in your ignition. And at first I thought, wait a minute, whoa, that doesn't make sense. But after a little bit of practical application, that's exactly what it means. If all of those items we just talked about in the ignition system and the valves are not, and the timing are not set absolutely correctly and working properly, the fuel system cannot do its job. It's important to get all of those set exactly where they need to be and then see what the idle mixture, the idle speed, and the performance is from the carburetors before you go jumping in and rebuilding or doing anything major. So, the next item on the list will be checking the transmission and overdrive oil and the differential oil. We want to make sure that they're up to the edge of the fill holes so that we've got enough to go driving for the whole year. We put our finger inside that hole and check to see what it is. I happen to use pipe cleaners bent at an angle to go inside and measure. And the cleanliness of the oil will tell us whether it needs to be flushed right away or if it's still nice and clean and can go for several more years. I like to recommend 5 years on a transmission and a differential oil change. Now, immediately that's going to bring up the question of what kind of oil do we use? There is a firestorm of discussion about what oil should go in the transmission and the overdrive. And there's been, even from the manuals themselves back in the day, there's been a varied choice of oils and lubricants that you can use. If you want the premium recommendation, that's what I'm going to talk about. And that would be an SAE 8590 weight gear oil for the transmission and overdrive and differential. But we want to have API GL4 for the transmission and a GL5 for the differential. The difference being the different metals in the two different systems require a little bit different oil. And that's what we use in all of our rebuilds. We've been doing this for 15, 20 years on this choice, and we've had excellent results. Now, the firestorm comes from people that say 30 weight non-detergent, engine oil, all different kinds of combinations, and those will work in the transmission overdrive, even in the differential if you wanted to. The reason that they work is we don't drive our cars hard enough, fast enough, or enough load and heat on them to make that different choice of, I'll call it a different choice of oil, show up as wrong. This is the premium. This is what the transmission gears want to have, is a gear oil. How about that? The 30 weight non-detergent is an engine oil and it's not built for gears. So these are on the shelf at your auto parts store, or they can get them overnight for you. The next item we're going to check is the flushing of the hydraulic system. And I say every 3 years it should be flushed and completely start over on the hydraulic system, whether you're using silicone brake fluid or regular brake fluid, either one. Here's a look at what we're using. A DOT 4 brake fluid that's available from all the Napa stores. That does an excellent job. Yes, it is corrosive to paint, so be careful. If you want to use silicone, you have to start from a brand new system and that's never had anything in it and then go with silicone. Silicone and regular brake fluid don't mix, they separate and cause a problem. So the next item on our list is a cooling system, and that's probably the second most popular failure system that we see. The first is the hydraulic system in brakes and clutch, and the second is the cooling system. So we want to flush the cooling system, and the flush that we use here at the ranch is an extremely good one. It's one of the last ones available with any acidic cleaning available in it at all. The other items that you can buy on the parts shelves are tuned down so far that they don't really clean a dirty cooling system. Sorry, I've tried them and they don't. This particular one works extremely well. It's the part number on it is a VC1 Motorcraft. Not normally available in the auto parts store, but you can find it online. So, next item we're going to talk about is pulling the dust boots to check for leaks on the front and rear tires. If you've got disc brakes on the front, it'll be checking the disc brakes. This is a look at a rear brake system that's fairly common no matter what kind of car you've got. And when I say pull the dust boot, I'm talking about this little BB right here. And it comes off after this little clip comes back off. And all we do is just pull this back and see what comes out. Uh-oh, look what's coming out of that one. Can you see that wet? That's supposed to be dry. The seal is back here and it keeps all the fluid inside. If the fluid gets on the boot, it's almost ready to fail, which of course is why this has been replaced. So that's your early warning system that you can use on rear brakes. We can also go inside the car and look where the master cylinders come through the firewall and pull those boots back and see the same thing. Is there any fluid, any wetness gathering? Comes in stages. First it'll be just damp, then it'll be very wet, then it will be, when you pull that boot back, you get a drip. You got to do something right now for that one. That's telling you it's almost over. So, the next one we're going to look at is topping up the steering. And on the TR6, it's a rack and pinion setup. So you have to go in through the adjustment nut. But on most of our standard steering, there is a steering box and a steering idler that have a fitting on top, and we loosen that up and fill it with originally 90-weight gear oil. But the problem with the 90-weight gear oil is that it leaks out past that seal after a number of years, and it refuses to quit leaking, and it gets messy everywhere. So what we've done is switched over to a constant velocity grease, which is a heavier material that won't leak past the seal and yet still gives us excellent lubrication inside the idler and the steering box. Next up is talking about, as long as we're checking those items, we're going to lubricate the 6 points on the chassis system, the ball joints, idler arm, tie rods, and kingpins. And there'll be a mixture of those different things on different cars, but you want to lube those points with a grease gun. Next item we're going to do is a wheel bearing check, and that will take you all day, or your mechanic will take. And you'll pull the wheel and get inside and you'll check the wheel bearings to make sure that they are in serviceable condition. And if they're not, you'll replace them. And if they're in very good condition, you can repack them with wheel bearing grease and put them back together and adjust them to specifications and put it all back together. I recommend about a 5-year cycle on adjusting and packing the wheel bearings. If you drive twice as many miles as most of us do, then you should cut that in half. So that gives you a look at the overall maintenance check on a small British car, and it happens to work very well for starting it up after a long winter's or a considerable many years nap. So we'll go into the driver's seat, we'll turn the ignition key on, and most of our cars will have an electric fuel pump, and we'll listen for that tick, 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 and know that the fuel pump's working. Pull the choke, ignition, start it up, and get it up to 1800 RPMs right away, and let it sit there and warm up. 1800, 1900, 1700, 1600, 1900, vary it up a little bit, let it warm up. And the reason I want 1800 RPMs is I want the oil pressure and the oil volume up quickly and getting everywhere fast. We don't need to have it sit and idle at 900 RPMs and not have enough oil pressure. Once we get it started and it's 1800 RPMs, we're immediately looking at the oil pressure. Have we got 60 or something close to that pounds of oil pressure? Have we got 1800 RPMs? Have we got any noises, any unusual noises that sound desperate? If we do, shut it down. If we let it warm up until the temperature gauge breaks down to about 160 degrees or a third of its scale. That gives you enough warm up that the car will run decently. The British cars don't like to run when they're very cold. So after that, we can put it in gear and check, see if everything's operating, and take it out and do a gentle 3, 4, 5, 6 mile run. Bring it back into the garage, have it sit, and see if we've got any leaks coming from underneath. If not, we're on our way. You can drive and have fun. So there you have it. That's the overview, and it's available. All 3 of these videos will be available on Facebook or on our website, britishcarranch@hotmail.com. No, that's our email address. You'll want our website address, which is britishcarranch.com. So any comments that you have, I would welcome. Any additions, anything you'd like to add, you can contact us by email or on our Facebook or web page. And I'd like you to consider coming back, checking in, because the next video we're going to add is called Shake, Shake, Shake. And that's going to be about the scuttle shake on most of our cars. How to diagnose it and how to get rid of it. So, thank you again, and I hope to see you on the road.